about the first wife of legendary country music star Johnny Cash is available for anyone to stream.
Before she died, Johnny Cash's first wife finally broke her silence, and her story reveals a different side to the legendary musician's life. Despite being married to the country music icon for 13 years and having 4 children together, Vivian Liberto was largely written out of Cash's history. Why did that happen? Finally, we'll get the true perspective that has been hidden from the rest of the world. Before her death from complications of lung cancer surgery in 2005, Vivian challenged several widely accepted narratives. What is the truth? We'll find out now. Come along. The early love story that started it all. It all started with a pair of skates and a summer night air, thick with the sound of laughter and music. Back in 1951, 17-year-old Vivian Liberto had no idea that a simple evening out with friends at a roller skating rink in San Antonio, Texas, would lead to a love story that would span years, cross oceans, and inspire generations. That night, under the glow of the rink's soft lights and the rhythm of a familiar tune playing in the background, a young Air Force recruit named Johnny Cash, just 19 and stationed nearby at Brooks Air Force Base, made his way across the floor. Was it fate? Or was it something a little more mischievous? Family stories have gone back and forth about how it really happened. Some say Johnny made a bet with his buddies that he'd not only talk to Vivian, but walk her home that same evening. Others say he literally knocked her over just to get a chance to introduce himself. Whichever version you believe, one thing was clear. Johnny Cash was smitten from the moment he laid eyes on her. Now, imagine being young, unsure on your skates, and trying to impress someone who clearly had a presence about them. That was Johnny. But he didn't try to act cool or pretend he was something he wasn't. Instead, he did something that was pure him. He sang. There was a Rosemary Clooney song playing, and Johnny, ever the crooner even before he became the Man in Black, sang along while skating beside Vivian. Wasn't that kind of charming in a clumsy, heartfelt sort of way? Vivian thought so. Why did Johnny Cash's first wife stay silent for so long? And what made her finally speak out right before she died? Stick around, because the ending will leave you speechless. That evening turned into the beginning of a whirlwind romance. Walks along San Antonio's scenic river walk. Hours of talking, sharing stories, and carving memories. Literally, Johnny etched "Johnny Loves Vivian" into a bench on the river walk, marking their special spot like a teenager trying to make time stand still. And maybe in some ways, he did. But love, as it often does, wasn't content to stay simple for long. After just 3 short weeks of dating, Johnny was deployed to Germany as part of his military service. Some might say 3 weeks isn't long enough to fall in love. But Johnny and Vivian would have likely asked, who says love has to follow the rules? Because even thousands of miles apart, they didn't let go of each other. Their hearts clung to the connection they had formed, and letters became their lifeline. Not just a few letters here and there, Johnny wrote Vivian constantly, sometimes every single day, pouring his heart out across continents. What kind of young man does that? One who's completely and undeniably in love. Vivian, on her part, wasn't just reading and replying, she was documenting. She kept a diary, carefully noting every single letter sent and received. The Cash daughters would one day hold on to over 1,000 of these letters, each one a time capsule of young love. Johnny didn't just write about the big things, he opened up about everything. What he ate, what he feared, how much he missed her. Over and over again, he called her my wife-to-be, holding on to the future he believed was waiting for them both. And then there were the words that made her laugh, the jokes he tucked into the envelopes, the charm that came through even on the page. In one letter, he joked about confusing postal workers. "Honey, the people at the post office laughed at me today. On the customs card, under description of contents, I put 500 love letters. They are love letters, and those people probably thought they were just the average run-of-the-mill love letters, but they're priceless to me." Who could read something like that and not feel the warmth behind it? Johnny and Vivian didn't just fall in love, they built it, letter by letter, moment by moment. And all of it started with a summer night, a skating rink, and one very determined young man who sang his way into someone's heart. Marriage, fame, and the cracks beneath the surface. After their wedding, life for Johnny and Vivian Cash didn't begin with flashing lights or red carpets. It began quietly, almost humbly, in Memphis, Tennessee. Johnny, determined to support his new family, took on a job selling appliances door to door. Imagine that. The man who would one day become a music legend, knocking on strangers' doors, trying to make a sale just to keep food on the table. It was a far cry from the roaring applause of stadiums and the bright lights of TV studios. But for Johnny, it was simply what had to be done. In May of 1955, just as their journey into parenthood began with the birth of their first daughter, Roseanne, something extraordinary happened. Johnny auditioned for Sun Records. That single moment, just a month after welcoming his first child, would set their entire world spinning in a new direction. Isn't it something how life can change in the blink of an eye? As their family grew, with Kathy arriving in 1956, Cindy in 1959, and little Tara in 1961, the Cash household grew louder, busier, and more chaotic in the most beautiful way. But with each new child came new challenges, especially when Johnny's career began to explode. When movie offers started rolling in, the family packed up and headed west, settling into a house in Encino, California, purchased, interestingly enough, from none other than Johnny Carson, the future Tonight Show icon. Despite the bright opportunities around them, the move was less about glamour and more about hope. Hope that maybe a new place could breathe fresh life into a marriage already beginning to show signs of strain. By 1961, in another attempt to patch up the growing distance between them, Johnny and Vivian moved again, this time to a hilltop home in Casitas Springs. The view was breathtaking, but the problems that had begun to take root weren't so easily left behind. With fame came a whirlwind of responsibilities, and Johnny, now a full-fledged star, was swept up in it all. Touring with his band, the Tennessee Three, he was gone more than he was home. On the road nearly 300 nights a year. Can you imagine that? 300 nights away from your family, your children, your spouse. It's no wonder things began to unravel. The man Vivian once traveled with, sewing his stage outfits and sharing his dreams, was now a stranger more often than not. Vivian, on the other hand, found herself shouldering the weight of the family almost entirely alone. Their home in Casitas Springs, though picturesque, was isolated. She spent her days wrestling with the rugged land, shooing away rattlesnakes and vermin, all while raising 4 young daughters. It wasn't just hard, it was lonely. And while Johnny's name grew brighter in the public eye, Vivian felt increasingly invisible. Roseanne, their eldest, would later share how the atmosphere at home always felt tense, how she lived with a constant knot in her stomach, worrying about her mother's well-being. Could a child really feel that much? Absolutely. Children always know when something isn't quite right. As the years passed, the signs of trouble became impossible to ignore. Johnny, once a man of firm principles, began to falter under the weight of his own demons. He started drinking heavily, slipping into what Vivian described as drunken stupors. He took substances, something he'd once spoken out against. It was heartbreaking. Watching someone you love slowly transform into a version of themselves you no longer recognize. And then came the whispers, the half-truths, and eventually the undeniable evidence of infidelity. Vivian found receipts for expensive gifts she didn't receive. She noticed how his time away from home kept stretching longer and longer. And there were murmurs from his bandmates, subtle but heavy with implication, hints of a growing closeness between Johnny and June Carter. At first, maybe she didn't want to believe it. After all, who wants to admit that their marriage, the life they built from scratch, might be falling apart? But the signs were there. The distance wasn't just physical anymore. It had become emotional, spiritual even. What began as a partnership rooted in love and ambition had slowly been chipped away by fame, addiction, and betrayal. The promises they made to each other on their wedding day now hung in the air like ghosts, visible, haunting, but long forgotten. For years, she stayed quiet while Johnny Cash became a legend. But right before she died, she broke her silence. And what she said was raw, emotional, and honestly, kinda heartbreaking. You'll want to hear every word, especially the final part, the breaking point. As Johnny Cash's fame reached dizzying heights, something darker was taking root behind the curtain of spotlight and applause. Those close to him would later say it wasn't overnight. How could it have been? But gradually, almost quietly, addiction crept into his life and took hold. What began as a quick fix, a way to cope with the brutal pace of touring and the crushing pressure of success, snowballed into something much more sinister. At first, it was a few pills here and there, just enough to take the edge off. But soon enough, alcohol, amphetamines, and barbiturates were no longer occasional comforts. They became necessities, daily rituals, crutches he leaned on harder with every passing year. Roseanne Cash, his eldest daughter, once described him as the sweetest dad. And surely, in his better moments, he was exactly that, gentle, charming, full of warmth. But those moments became fewer and farther between. She, like the rest of the family, watched in silent heartbreak as substances changed the man they loved. It's a painful thing, isn't it? To witness someone slipping away while they're still right there in front of you. The same smile, the same voice, but something deeper has shifted. Something vital. What made it all the more tragic was that this wasn't just a man who used to denounce hard substances, he used to loathe them. He once called them filthy and dirty, preaching about their dangers. So what happened? How does someone go from condemning a thing to clinging to it? Maybe it was the loneliness of hotel rooms. Maybe it was the pressure to always be on. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the emptiness that no amount of applause could ever quite fill. Friends around him began to notice changes, but they didn't always know what to do. Some brushed it off with jokes, calling him nervous or quirky, never quite acknowledging the real storm that was brewing. And Johnny didn't make it easy. He'd disappear for stretches, heading out to Lake Casitas, ostensibly for fishing, but more often to drink and use in solitude. He became a familiar face to the local police, not because of his music, but because of the chaos that followed him like a shadow. And then there was June Carter. Vivian, Johnny's wife at the time, had her suspicions about June for a while. And really, how could she not? There were signs, receipts for expensive gifts, whispers from bandmates, the way Johnny lit up around her. It wasn't paranoia. It was intuition. Daughter Cindy later put it plainly, once June came along, she relentlessly, she wanted Dad and she was going to get him. Harsh? Maybe, but also heartbreakingly honest. Vivian wasn't just watching her marriage fall apart, she was watching it crumble piece by piece, while the whole world cheered for the woman replacing her. Even Johnny himself seemed to accept the inevitable. In an interview with Rolling Stone, he admitted that he and Vivian both knew where things were heading. Eventually, we were going to be divorced, and we were going to go through hell, he said. It was a chillingly calm acknowledgement of the wreckage he knew he was causing. But sometimes, knowing something is wrong doesn't stop a person from doing it. The spiral didn't stop at affairs and addiction. In June 1965, things took a surreal and devastating turn. While high and drunk, Johnny accidentally started a wildfire in Los Padres National Forest. It wasn't just a little fire. It consumed 508 acres and drove away nearly all the endangered California condors in the area, 49 out of 53. When questioned about it, his response wasn't exactly remorseful. Witnesses said he seemed full of amphetamines and arrogance. And what did he tell the investigators? "I don't give a damn about your yellow buzzards." That's what he said. Can you imagine? A man so beloved by fans, yet capable of that level of recklessness and disregard? And through it all, Vivian held on. She endured. For years. She called those years a degrading, horrible experience. She wasn't exaggerating. Imagine loving someone so deeply while watching them self-destruct, publicly, privately, relentlessly. By the summer of 1966, she reached her breaking point. She filed for divorce, citing his infidelity and substance misuse. She'd stood by him longer than most would have. But even love has its limits. The divorce was finalized in late 1967, and with it, Vivian was granted a portion of Johnny's music income from their years together. Their family home in Casitas Springs, $1,000 a month in alimony, and $1,600 in monthly child support. A legal settlement, sure, but could any of that truly compensate for the emotional toll? And just 2 years later, Johnny married June Carter, this time sober. Vivian's final words and the truth she wanted known. For years, Vivian Liberto's voice was barely a whisper in the grand narrative of American music history. Most people knew her only in passing, as Johnny Cash's first wife, the woman whose place in his life seemed more like a prologue than a chapter. But what happens when the person written out of history finally gets a chance to speak? In 2007, 2 years after her passing, Vivian finally shared her story with the world through her memoir, I Walked the Line, My Life with Johnny, co-written with Ann Sharpstein. And what a story it was. Hidden within the pages was something few expected, a staggering collection of nearly 10,000 love letters exchanged between her and Johnny during their courtship and marriage. Who keeps 10,000 letters? Vivian didn't just write a book. She opened a window. Through that window, readers saw not just a woman hurt by love, but a woman who had loved deeply and survived quietly. Her account challenged the long-standing narrative that had painted Johnny and June Carter Cash as the ultimate love story, a kind of country music fairy tale. But was it truly that simple? Vivian didn't think so. She wrote openly about how she believed June had relentlessly pursued Johnny at his most vulnerable, when his addiction and inner turmoil had left him exposed, and easily swayed. According to Vivian, June watched as her marriage fell apart, seemingly unfazed. It wasn't bitterness that drove Vivian to say these things, it was the truth as she lived it. And it wasn't just her opinion either. Even Rosanne Cash, Johnny and Vivian's eldest daughter, echoed her mother's sentiments. Rosanne said that their family often felt erased from Johnny's story, especially after the release of the 2005 film Walk the Line, which, in her words, reduced Vivian to a mere speed bump on Johnny's road to romantic redemption with June. But was that fair? Was it even honest? Then came 2020, when the documentary My Darling Vivian, directed by Matt Riddlehoover, gave Vivian another platform, this time on screen. The film drew from hours of interviews with all 4 of Johnny and Vivian's daughters, who finally got the chance to share their mother's truth without interruption. Through their stories, old photographs, and never-before-seen footage, audiences met a woman far more complex than any movie had portrayed. She was not just the woman left behind. She was a mother who raised 4 children largely on her own while enduring intense public scrutiny. She faced racial harassment simply because her Italian-American features were mistaken for Black ancestry, an experience that left deep scars. She knew loneliness in a way few could imagine, isolated from the glamorous world her husband had been pulled into. But she didn't crumble. She endured. What did Vivian really want at the end of it all? She didn't seek revenge, nor did she want to rewrite history in anger. Her daughters shared that what their mother wanted most was to be remembered as Johnny Cash's first and true love. Not a placeholder, not a footnote, not a character to be pushed to the margins. Even though she remarried in 1968 to businessman Dick Diston and remained happily with him until her death, Vivian's daughters said she never stopped loving Johnny. He was, as they put it, the love of her life, right up until the day she died. Isn't that something? That after all the pain, all the silence, all the watching from the shadows as someone else got the spotlight, her heart still belonged to him. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.